The Concord archives projected coordinates onto the galactic map. Sol system, third planet. Vax Tour studied the blue-green world with a mixture of desperation and dread. They still fight among themselves, objected Counselor Trelmax, the Palladian representative, whose species had evolved without predators. Primitive nuclear weaponry, religious conflicts, resource wars. These creatures are savages. Zenla's tendrils curled in what her species considered amusement. And when was the last time your people fought anything, Counselor? 4,000 years ago. The void consumes pacifists and warriors alike. At least warriors know how to bite back. The holographic display shifted to surveillance footage from Earth's most recent conflicts, urban warfare in shattered cities, naval vessels exchanging missile fire, aircraft deploying precision munitions. To the Concord's analysts, humans appeared almost gleeful in their violence, a species that had elevated warfare to an art form while simultaneously developing technologies explicitly designed to annihilate themselves. Their weaponry is crude, noted the military attaché, but their tactical doctrine is unsettling. They fight to inflict maximum casualties, not to achieve positional advantage. Vax Tour adjusted his neural implants to filter the most disturbing footage. They've been killing each other for their entire recorded history. Even their entertainment simulates violence. They're perfect. Counselor Ix Moore, the eldest Meridian survivor, fractured slightly along her left side, a sign of extreme distress. Contact protocols explicitly forbid introducing primitive species to galactic technology. The resulting cultural shock will be manageable compared to extinction, Zhenle interrupted. Unless you have another solution for the void. Silence answered her challenge. The emergency session continued into its 14th hour. Surveillance logs documented humanity's endless capacity for violence and their equally impressive talent for survival. Unlike the harmonious evolution of Concord species, humans had clawed their way up from prey animals to apex predators through relentless adaptation and cooperation despite their differences. Their history suggests another concerning trait, warned a xenopsychology specialist. Once united against a common enemy, humans fight with increased effectiveness. Their most decisive military victories came when disparate factions temporarily aligned. Vax Tour leaned forward. Then we give them the ultimate common enemy. If we do this, said Ix Moore, her crystalline voice resonating with warning, we cannot unring this bell. We introduce them to interstellar travel, to advanced weaponry. What happens after the void is defeated? If they turn on us next. Zhenle's manipulator appendages gestured to the data showing void advancement patterns. That assumes there will be an after, Counselor. Current projections show no survival scenario without intervention. The final vote was not unanimous, but the outcome was clear. The Omega Protocol was activated. Within hours, a select delegation departed for the quarantine system. Diplomats, scientists, and military advisors prepared to offer humanity the stars in exchange for their particular talents. As the Concord vessel activated its faster-than-light engines, Admiral Vax Tour recorded his final thoughts in the mission log. We have spent millennia evolving beyond our violent instincts, creating a civilization of peace and harmony. Now, our salvation rests with creatures who never outgrew theirs. The irony would be amusing if the stakes weren't so absolute. May whatever deities they worship guide their savage hands, for we are about to give them weapons beyond their comprehension and turn them loose upon the galaxy. The vessel disappeared into the void, carrying with it the last desperate hope of 17 dying species and the fate of countless more. Dr. Reyes stood alone in the Pentagon's newly established Concord liaison office, studying the technology transfer documents with trembling hands. The alien data storage crystal pulsed with soft light, containing secrets that would have taken humanity centuries to discover independently. Ready to change the world, Doctor? She turned to find General Maxwell Hayes in the doorway, his weathered face grave despite his attempted levity. As the newly appointed head of Earth's Unified Defense Command, Hayes carried a weight few could comprehend. This isn't just propulsion technology and weapon systems, Rice said, gesturing to the data displays. They're offering medical technology that could eliminate most diseases, energy solutions that would end resource scarcity. Assuming we survive long enough to implement them, Hayes interrupted. The Concord delegation made it clear. We have months, not years. The void spread is accelerating. The general activated the wall display, showing the first detailed scans of the Martian massacre. Black, oil-like tendrils still writhed through the shattered habitation domes. Recovery teams reported that the colonists hadn't simply been killed, they'd been consumed, their biomass and neural patterns absorbed into the void collective. The diplomatic corps is still debating what to call them, Hayes said, staring at the footage. Enemy seems inadequate. Predator is more accurate, Rice replied. Or parasite. Either way, we need to be ready. Hayes handed her a tablet with presidential authorization codes. The Shanghai and Brasilia shipyards are being converted as we speak. Houston is developing crew training protocols based on Concord tactical data. You've been appointed Chief Science Officer for Project Nemesis. Rice blinked. I'm an astronomer, not a weapons developer. You're the foremost expert on extraterrestrial biology since the Mars incident, and you understand the Concord technology better than anyone else on the planet. We need you. Before she could respond, her secure comm unit chimed with an alert from the Lunar Observatory. The message was brief but chilling. 3 more Void Scout vessels detected at the edge of the solar system. They're testing our response capabilities, Hayes said grimly. The Concord believes they're still gathering intelligence before committing to a full invasion. How long do we have? Our Solarian advisors estimate 4 months before the main Void fleet arrives. We need deployable weapons platforms in half that time. Rice stared at the Mars footage again, her scientific detachment crumbling as she remembered the faces of colleagues stationed there, researchers she'd trained with, shared meals with. She thought about the thousands of children across Earth currently gazing at stars with wonder, unaware that death was racing toward them from those same heavens. There's something the Concord isn't telling us, she said finally. Ambassador Kirzinith mentioned that we're uniquely suited to fighting the void. I want to know why. Hayes nodded. Investigate as needed, but remember our priority. In 16 weeks, humanity needs teeth sharp enough to tear through whatever's coming. As Reyes gathered the alien data crystals, news feeds across the planet showed the same scenes. Factories retooling for war production, military recruitment centers overflowing, former adversary nations coordinating defense strategies. For the first time in recorded history, humanity moved with singular purpose. On the International Space Station, hastily converted to a forward command post, American and Chinese astronauts worked alongside Russian and Iranian engineers to install Concord sensor technology. Ancient hatreds and geopolitical tensions dissolved in the face of extinction-level threat. We've spent our entire history finding reasons to kill each other, Rice murmured, watching the unprecedented cooperation. Now we'll see what happens when we find a reason to kill together. The Nemesis weapon testing range had been established in the asteroid belt, far from civilian observation. Admiral Chen watched through reinforced viewports as the prototype RASER, relativistic amplified synchrotron emission repeater, sliced through 3 decommissioned satellites and a 2-kilometer asteroid with terrifying precision. Energy output exceeds projections by 37%, reported Commander Jackson, reviewing the telemetry. Cooldown time is still problematic. Can we cycle between multiple emitters? Chen asked. Possible, but risky. Cross-system interference cold. Could be managed through isolated circuit pathways, interrupted Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, the weapons lead designer. The diminutive physicist had been a theoretical particle researcher before the void threat. Now his equations killed. We already implement similar safeguards in nuclear submarines. Chen nodded. Make it happen. I want sustained fire capability. Later, in her private quarters, Chen reviewed classified footage from the first void incursion at Mars. The Concorde had been reluctant to share detailed combat data, claiming it might disturb human sensibilities. Chen had demanded it anyway. The footage showed something the public broadcasts had carefully omitted. The void entities didn't simply kill their victims. They transformed them. The final transmissions from Mars Colony showed colonists with black tendrils erupting from their bodies, their expressions locked in silent screams as their consciousness was absorbed into the hive. A soft chime announced a visitor. Ambassador Kir Zenith entered, ducking beneath the human-proportioned doorway. "Your species works quickly," the alien observed, gesturing to the weapon testing data. "The Meridians required 2 years to develop similar technology. You've done it in weeks." "Desperation is motivating," Chen replied. "What brings you to the weapons range, Ambassador? This isn't exactly diplomatic territory." "On the contrary, I've come with information your council has authorized me to share." The ambassador's multifaceted eyes shifted color slightly. "Information about why your species is particularly suited to this conflict." Chen deactivated the screens. "I'm listening." "The void entity is telepathic. It coordinates across vast distances through quantum entanglement within a shared consciousness. When it encounters sentient species, it attempts neural assimilation. With most Concorde species, this process is efficient, but not with humans. Your brains are uniquely resistant." Kir Zenith's translator struggled to convey the alien's discomfort. "Your neural architecture evolved differently from most sentient species. Where Concorde minds develop toward harmony and cooperation, human brains remain fractious, dissonant." "You're saying we're mentally unstable." "I'm saying the very aspects of human psychology that made us hesitant to contact you. Your capacity for conflicting emotions, your ability to compartmentalize trauma, your neural adaptability in the face of horror, make you uniquely resistant to void assimilation. Where other species' minds are overwhelmed in seconds, humans can resist for minutes, sometimes hours." Chen processed this information with growing unease. "You were watching us all along, studying our psychology. We observed many promising species. Most evolved toward harmony and cooperation as they advanced. Humans retained primal defense mechanisms alongside your higher reasoning. Fear responses, aggression triggers, psychological compartmentalization. Your species never fully transcended your predator origins. So we're what? Your psychological shock troops?" Chen asked, anger edging into her voice. "You are our last hope," Kir Zenith replied simply. "The void cannot easily process human minds, and it cannot predict human tactics. Your strategies appear insane by Concorde standards, and equally incomprehensible to the void." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the station. Commander Jackson's voice came over the comms. "Admiral, long-range sensors detect 12 void vessels entering the Kuiper Belt. They're coming faster than anticipated." Chen's eyes met the ambassador's. "Time to put your theory to the test." Aboard the Nemesis, the aftermath of humanity's first interstellar victory wrought no celebration. Medical bays overflowed with the wounded. Repair crews worked in zero to patch hull breaches. In the tactical center, Admiral Chen met with her surviving ship captains, 9 faces where 26 should have been. "The Thermopyla's black box data is being analyzed," reported Captain Guian of the Sentinel. "Their sacrifice provided invaluable intelligence on void vessel architecture." "They called it Protocol Omega," said Captain Rodriguez, her arm in a makeshift sling. "As if they had planned for suicide runs from the beginning." Chen's expression remained neutral. Every contingency was considered during ship design. Before anyone could respond, Dr. Rice entered the tactical center, her science team behind her carrying equipment cases emblazoned with biohazard warnings. "We've recovered tissue samples from disabled void vessels," she announced without preamble. "You need to see this." The holographic display activated, showing microscopic structures that pulsed with unnatural movement. Black tendrils reached out from central masses, attempting to connect with each other even in death. "The void isn't a species, it's a collective," Rice explained. Each ship is actually a colony organism composed of thousands of individual units linked through a quantum neural network. And some of those units used to be people. She zoomed in on structures that looked disturbingly like deformed humanoid cellular patterns. Meridian, Solarian, and at least 3 other Concord species DNA has been identified in these samples. The void doesn't just kill, it absorbs and repurposes those ships we destroyed. They were built from the bodies and minds of people who were once like us. Silence descended on the tactical center as the implications sank in. "Does the Concord know about this?" asked Captain Nguyen finally. "They must," Chen replied, which explains their reluctance to share complete intelligence. Reyes nodded. "They've been fighting their own assimilated populations. That's why they were losing. How do you maintain military resolve when the enemy wears your children's faces?" A communications officer interrupted with an urgent message. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. The UN Secretary-General and the Joint Chiefs request your immediate return. They're calling it Operation Hellfire." Later, as the human fleet regrouped for the journey home, Chen found Ambassador Kira Zenith in the observation lounge, watching repair drones swarm over battle-damaged hulls. "Your species fights with remarkable commitment," the ambassador said, choosing words carefully. "You mean we're willing to die?" Chen replied bluntly. "More than that." Captain Rivera of the Thermopylae, she did not hesitate. "In thousands of years of Concord warfare, we documented only 17 instances of deliberate self-sacrifice. Your species authorized it as standard tactical doctrine." Chen studied the alien's body language, still learning to read the subtle shifts in posture and coloration that indicated emotion. "You're afraid of us," she realized suddenly. Kira Zenith's translator remained silent for several seconds before responding. "The Concord Council has received your government's Operation Hellfire briefing. Your leadership proposes tactics that violate every principle of civilized warfare established in the last 8 millennia. And yet you'll approve them," Chen said. "Because they'll work." "Because we have no choice," the ambassador corrected. "But when this war ends, if it ends, the galaxy will contain a spacefaring species whose first interstellar act was to develop weapons capable of genocide, and whose military doctrine treats individual survival as optional." Chen turned to the viewport, watching as the nemesis aligned for Earth return. "Then you'd better hope we don't run out of external enemies." Operation Scorched Earth proceeded with mechanical precision. Human strike teams, their ships now augmented with stealth technology derived from Meridian cloaking systems, penetrated deep into void-controlled territories. The Concord provided star charts, but maintained official distance from the missions, their leadership unwilling to formally endorse tactics that violated millennia of ethical warfare protocols. On the command deck of EWS Artemis, Colonel Wei Lin monitored the deployment of Legion units, lurking engineered genetic interrupt operational nanites against the primary void gestation world in the Ta City system. Through her neural interface, she observed thousands of microscopic machines infiltrating the planet's bizarre biological structures. "Replication rate nominal," reported her XO. "Legion swarms achieving 50% coverage of target biomass." We nodded, her expression betraying nothing of the revulsion she felt. The targeting algorithms ensured the nanites would only attack void reproductive tissue, but the distinction felt academic when viewing the planetary-scale destruction through high-resolution feeds. "Second wave deployment in 30 seconds, she confirmed. The void gestational world resembled a vast neural network made physical, pulsing organic pathways connecting massive node structures where new void entities were cultivated from captured biomass. Human scientists theorized that each world functioned as both a reproduction center and a distributed consciousness hub. Wei's tactical display suddenly flashed warnings as energy signatures erupted from the planet's surface. "Defensive response detected. They're adapting faster than projected." Massive tendrils of dark matter erupted from the planet, lashing out toward the Artemis and its support vessels. The human fleet executed emergency evasive maneuvers, But 2 ships were caught and enveloped in writhing darkness. Hermes and Perseus compromised, her tactical officer reported grimly. No life signs detected. We made the call instantly. Execute Protocol Prometheus. Aboard the ensnared vessels, emergency AI systems activated, overriding safety protocols. Their antimatter containment fields collapsed in precisely calculated sequences, creating twin supernovae that seared through the dark matter tendrils. Legion deployment at 78%, her XO confirmed. Sufficient for cascading effect. Wei authorized immediate withdrawal, her fleet accelerating to FTL speeds as the nanite swarms achieved critical mass. Behind them, the void world began to convulse as trillions of engineered machines disrupted its reproductive processes at the molecular level. 2 days later, in a secure briefing room aboard the Nemesis, Wei delivered her report directly to Admiral Chen. The holographic display showed 12 similar operations conducted simultaneously across void-controlled space. Tactical objectives achieved. Wei concluded, all targeted gestational worlds have been neutralized. Estimated reduction in void reproductive capability, 83%. Chen studied the after-action data, particularly the casualty reports. 8 ships lost, 342 personnel. Acceptable losses given strategic gains. Wei responded automatically, though her hands trembled slightly. Chen noticed but said nothing. Instead, she brought up new intelligence gathered during the operation, data that hadn't been shared with the Concord allies. Your team recovered this from the Ta City command node. The display showed what appeared to be a star chart with thousands of systems marked with pulsing indicators. We nodded. It appears to be a strategic expansion map. The Void wasn't just consuming territories at random. They'd been executing a systematic galaxy-wide assimilation plan. Chen expanded the display. Our xenolinguists have partially decoded their timeline projections. According to this, the Void expected to achieve complete galactic consumption within 70 years. And now we fought time, but provoked their full attention. Chen's expression darkened. Intelligence suggests they're abandoning all other fronts and redirecting their forces. Where? Here. Chen zoomed in on a familiar star. They're coming for Earth. Beneath London's shattered financial district, converted underground tunnels housed one of Earth's last functioning military command centers. Admiral Chen, her face gaunt from sleepless weeks, reviewed tactical feeds showing the planet's diminishing defensive positions. Void forces had established beachheads across 6 continents, their bizarre organic structures spreading like cancerous growths. Northern Hemisphere orbital defense grid is down to 8% capacity, reported General Hayes, his uniform stained with blood that wasn't his own. Southern grid holding at 23%, but not for long. And the evacuation? Chen asked. 7 million civilians secured in deep shelters worldwide. Another 12 million in transit. Hayes didn't mention the billions unaccounted for. They both knew the numbers. A Concord communication officer, one of the few alien advisors who'd remained on Earth after the invasion began, approached with urgency. Admiral, we've decoded a partial transmission from the Void Command consciousness. It's different from anything we've intercepted before. The holographic display showed writhing patterns that the translation algorithm struggled to interpret. Eventually, words formed. Why resist? Your biological and technological distincts will be preserved. Your mind will join the collective harmony. Separate TNES is pain. Humanity is TRANSCNDNC. They're trying to communicate, Hayes asked incredulously. Dr. Reyes, newly arrived from the Antarctic Research Facility, studied the message with scientific detachment, despite her exhaustion. Not exactly. This isn't negotiation. It's incomprehension. The Void can't understand why we continue fighting beyond all rational hope. Because they've never encountered humans before, Chen said. Reyes nodded. The Concord species surrendered when defeat appeared mathematically inevitable. The Void's consciousness evolved expecting rational opponents who prioritize survival above all else. So this is what? Their version of puzzled frustration? Hayes asked. More like evolutionary pressure, Rice replied. We're forcing them to develop new cognitive frameworks. They're trying to understand human psychology to predict our actions. The implications hung heavily in the command center. If the Void succeeded in comprehending human thought patterns, humanity's only advantage would vanish. The bunker shuddered as another Void attack struck the surface. Dust rained from the reinforced ceiling. Status on Project Lazarus? Chen asked, turning to Reyes. First prototype functional, but field testing was interrupted by the Paris facility's destruction. She produced a small device from her lab coat. This is the only working model we managed to evacuate. Chen examined the innocuous-looking neural implant. And you're certain it works? It successfully blocked Void assimilation attempts in 3 test subjects infected during the Mumbai incursion. Their consciousness remained intact for 17 hours, long enough to glean critical intelligence about Void communication networks before termination became necessary. Hayes stared at the device. Human test subjects. Volunteered, I hope. All were terminal cases already, Rice replied, not meeting his eyes. They knew what they were signing up for. How many can we produce? Chen asked. With existing resources and facilities, perhaps 100 within 2 weeks. Chen activated the global command network. Attention all sector commanders. Initiative Trojan authorized effective immediately. Priority Encryption Protocol 17. She turned to Hayes. Select your best infiltration teams. We're going to turn the Void's strength against it. Hayes understood immediately. You're sending people to be deliberately captured. Even with the implants, that's a suicide mission. Not suicide, Chen corrected grimly. Sacrifice. The synthetic pathogen's development had required breaking taboos even humanity had long maintained. In the Antarctic facility's most restricted section, Dr. Rice led Ambassador Keir Zenith through a series of biohazard containment doors. Your council requested transparency, she explained, her breath fogging in the deliberately cold air. This is what transparency looks like. The final chamber contained 12 isolation pods, each housing a volunteer infected with both the Void neural pathogen and Raya's experimental countermeasure. Monitoring systems displayed their neural patterns, fragmented, unstable, but still recognizably human. The Lazarus implants gave us insight into how the Void neural network functions, Rice explained. These volunteers are testing the reverse, a way to introduce human cognitive chaos into their unified consciousness. Keir Zenith's translator struggled to convey the aliens' horror. These were people. Still are, technically, Rice corrected. Their higher functions remain intact despite partial Void assimilation. They report experiencing the hive mind as background noise. Accessible, but not overwhelming. How is this possible? The same neural architecture that makes us resistant to assimilation makes us dangerous vectors once partially integrated. Human minds evolved to handle cognitive dissonance, to hold contradictory beliefs simultaneously, to compartmentalize trauma. Rice gestured to the volunteer in the nearest pod, a woman whose skin showed the beginning of black tendrils beneath the surface. Subject 7 can access the Void collective consciousness while maintaining her individual identity. She's providing real-time data on how the pathogen spreads through their network. The subject's eyes opened, still human except for flecks of darkness spreading across the sclera. She smiled at the ambassador. They're afraid of you, she said, her voice layered with echoing undertones. The collective has never experienced fear before. It's disruptive to their harmony. Ambassador Keir Zenith stepped backward involuntarily. This violates every ethical principle of sentient research. Extinction scenarios, Rice quoted grimly. Ethics are a luxury. Later, as the Thanatos mission preparations continued, Rice found herself alone in the primary laboratory. The carefully engineered pathogen, invisible to normal microscopy, but deadly to the void's quantum neural structure, was being loaded into specialized delivery systems. Her personal tablet chimed with a private message from Subject 7. I can feel them all now. Billions of minds across thousands of light years, connected in perfect harmony. Until we introduce discord. They don't understand pain or fear or rage, the emotions that defined humanity's evolution. These are spreading through their network like infection. We are the virus they have no immunity against. Rai stared at the message, understanding its implications. The void had evolved as a perfect consensus, never experiencing the internal conflicts that shaped human consciousness. The very traits that had nearly destroyed humanity, its capacity for hatred, fear, cognitive dissonance, were proving lethal to an entity built on perfect unity. She composed her response carefully. How long can you maintain your individuality? The reply came immediately. Not long, but long enough. They're trying to isolate us by severing neural pathways. Too late. The pathogen uses their own connections as transmission vectors. Elegant design, Doctor. Is it painful? Rice couldn't help asking. For them or for us, came the response. Yes to both. But there's something else happening, something unexpected. Some of the assimilated Concord minds are waking up. Your pathogen isn't just destroying the void network. It's liberating those absorbed into it. Ray's hands trembled as she typed her final question. Worth it? The screen remained blank for nearly a minute before the reply appeared. Ask me again when I'm the only consciousness left in my head. For now, we're winning. The new Geneva Concordats ratification ceremony concluded with 17 alien delegations and 37 human representatives signing the document that would reshape galactic politics for millennia. As the formal proceedings ended, Admiral Chen slipped away from the diplomatic pageantry, finding a quiet balcony overlooking the city's reconstruction. Earth was healing, albeit slowly. The massive void structures that had once dominated skylines were being systematically dismantled, their bizarre biomaterials studied, and, where possible, repurposed. In the distance, a new arcology rose where downtown Geneva had once stood, its architecture blending human aesthetics with Concord engineering principles. Admiring your handiwork. Dr. Rice joined her at the railing, her formal attire incongruous with the haunted look that never quite left her eyes. Hardly my work alone, Chen replied. The Concord Intelligence Directorate released their final casualty assessment today, Rice said. 23 civilizations extinct, 47 planets rendered permanently uninhabitable. Estimated sentient deaths, 112 billion. Chen remained silent. Numbers that large became meaningless, impossible for the human mind to truly comprehend. But they also confirmed that over 3 billion previously assimilated individuals have been recovered. Rise continued, a hint of wonder in her voice. The pathogen didn't just destroy the void network. It freed minds that had been absorbed. Some had been trapped for decades, preserved within the collective consciousness. Unexpected mercy from an unmerciful weapon, Chen observed. Their conversation paused as a diplomatic shuttle passed overhead, bearing markings of a species neither had encountered before. The void's collapse had opened travel routes to previously isolated regions of the galaxy. New civilizations, having hidden from or survived the void in distant sectors, were now seeking alliance with the newly formed Concordat. The Erelosian ambassador asked an interesting question yesterday, Chen said. She wanted to know if humans had always been warriors, or if the void conflict transformed us. What did you tell her? That our history is filled with both war and peace, brutality and compassion. That we were shaped by conflict, but not defined by it. Ray smiled faintly. A diplomatic answer. Would you have preferred honesty? That when pushed to extinction, we embraced methodologies even our own ancestors would have condemned. That we crossed lines we once believed inviolable. Below them, a mixed group of human and alien children played in a newly established park. The younger generation seemed to adapt more easily to the new interspecies reality, without the baggage of having lived through the war. The Meridian Reconstruction Fund approved our proposal, Rice said, changing the subject. Terraforming of their homeworld begins next month. Within 30 years, their crystal forests might grow again. Chen nodded. Good. We owe them that much. Is that why you've been pushing the Council to prioritize recovery over military expansion? Guilt. Perspective, Chen corrected. The war proved we could be merciless when necessary. Peace requires proving we can be compassionate when possible. A soft alert chimed from Chen's neural implant, a technology once developed for warfare now repurposed for civilian coordination. The newly established Deep Space Monitoring Network had detected unusual energy signatures at the galaxy's edge. Something troubling? Rice asked, noting her expression. Probably nothing. Routine anomaly. Chen straightened her uniform. But as the new Concordat military charter states, eternal vigilance. Rice finished. The price of continued existence. Their eyes met in silent understanding. Humanity had saved the galaxy through mercilessness. Its next challenge would be to protect it through wisdom.